Wesley's POV.
I tried to sleep like Dr. Russo had suggested, but I couldn't get more than a few minutes at a time. The chair was cold and uncomfortable, and my mind moved a mile a minute as I sat in the almost silent room. All the events from that evening played over and over in my mind as I tried to figure out if there was anything I could have done differently to change the outcome. And the only solution I could come up with was to have never agreed to Alpha Tim's proposal in the first place. Which, I didn't even know what had happened with all of that. It wasn't my priority at that moment, and I knew my dad would handle it and fill me in. I could have joined her on the bed. It was plenty big enough. All the beds in the PAC clinic were large enough to hold 2 people. It was so mates could stay together when one was sick or injured, since the mate bond helped werewolves heal faster. But I was too scared to jostle her and mess up her stitches. With her being human, I wasn't sure exactly how much longer her healing would take than a werewolf. A scratch sounded at the door, followed by a mind link from Nolan. "Can I come in?" I sat up from my half-laying on the bed position. I stretched my arms and cracked my neck to relieve some of the tension from the not very comfortable way I'd been laying. Sure, I linked him back, getting to my feet to let him in. I opened the door, and he trotted in, still in his wolf form. It was probably because he'd ripped through his clothes when fighting off Haven's ex. But it was also probably because his wolf needed to see for himself that his Luna was okay. He walked to the bed, his nose nudging and sniffing at Haven's hand that still reached out towards where I had been sitting. He whimpered as he looked at her bandages, then moved to the foot of the bed, laying down on the floor, his head resting on his paws. My wolf was getting anxious, he told me. I needed to see her. Be closer to her, he explained. I understand, I replied. She's your Luna. Our Luna. I'm still pissed at myself for letting that asshole get away. Seb will find him. He shouldn't have to even look for him. He should be dead already. My lips twitched with a bitter laugh. He'll get what he deserves when Seb finds him and brings him here. Good. I sat back in my chair and took her hand again, my thumb stroking her smooth skin. Touching her had always felt different, better, than any other touch, but now, with the mate bond in place, it was second to none. Nolan and I sat in silence, both of us in our own heads and thoughts. I pulled out my cell phone, thankful my dad had given it to me before he went home for the night, opening it to my text messages with Haven. It had fallen onto the lawn when I'd shifted to get to the PAC hospital. I scrolled all the way back to the beginning of our messages, to the first text I'd sent her when I'd invited her to coffee. I read them all the way to the most recent, the messages from her during the week I had ignored her so we could fulfill our plan to trap Timothy. So many messages I had left unanswered. So many reasons for her to no longer wish to be with me. She'd wanted me with her at the height of her fear and pain, but what would happen when she was fully coherent and not caught up in the moment? Was it just a mate bond making her want me with her, making her seek my touch and comfort, or did she truly want me because she wanted me? What if she rejects me? I asked Nolan, my voice shaking even in the mind link. You deserve it, he replied, his head lifting and his eyes narrowing at me. I know, I agreed. I fucked up. Damn right you did. I chuckled at his candidness, even though it wasn't a funny situation. But he was already acting like a true Gamma. Mad at his Alpha because his Alpha hurt his Luna. Does it hurt? I asked him, looking over at my sleeping mate. Rejection? Nolan asked, and I nodded. Like a bitch, he said. And it will probably be worse for you, because you already have a connection with her. I clenched my jaw and exhaled through my nose so I wouldn't growl at him. He was just being honest, just preparing me for the worst-case scenario. But that didn't mean I had to like it. I'll be there for you, though, if she does, he added. Just like you were there for me. Thanks, I replied. But Wes, he said. I turned my head to him again. I don't think she'll reject you. However, I do think you're going to have to grovel. For real this time. I shook my head, dropping my chin to my chest, not sure whether to laugh or cry at his words. His chuckle echoed in my head and I sighed, then said, You should try to sleep, Nolan. So should you, he retorted. Get on the bed with her. Hold her. You won't hurt her. She's not made of glass. I swallowed, but nodded. Nolan once again coming in to save the day with his wisdom. I set my phone on the nightstand by the bed, then carefully climbed onto it, sliding under the blanket and scooting closer to Haven. I stayed on my left side, my body curled around her and my head propped up on my arm. My right hand laced with the fingers of her right hand, lifting it to hold it against my chest, so her skin touched mine and the mate bond could do its job. Then I closed my eyes, focusing on her body next to mine, on the feel of her skin, and her scent filling my lungs as my body finally succumbed to some much-needed sleep. The loud and incessant ringing of my phone on the nightstand jolted me out of my deep sleep. "Goddess fucking damn it," I grumbled as quietly as possible as I rolled over and grabbed it to answer it before it could wake Haven. She needed to heal, and she needed to sleep more than I did. 2 hours. It had only been 2 hours of sleep, but the call was from Benjamin, and I knew I needed to talk to him. "Hello?" I murmured into the phone, keeping my voice low. "Hey," he said. "I'm sorry if I woke you." "It's fine," I replied, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed to stand up. "What's going on? Is your dad in custody?" I asked him as I walked to the window of the room. Benjamin sighed, and I knew just from that one reaction that whatever he was about to tell me would not be what I wanted to hear. "He got away. During the chaos. Your dad got distracted from the mind link you all received, and his hold on me loosened. I lunged for my dad, but he was ready for me to attack and he took off, pretty much right after you left the room. I pursued him and came very close to catching him. I tried to challenge him for the pack, got almost all the words out. But he had a transport stone, and he vanished before I could finish speaking." "Fuck!" I exclaimed under my breath. Nolan lifted his head, his ears twitching forward, trying to pick up Ben's words through the phone. "I know," Ben said. "Your dad told me the council member arrived while you were all in the hospital. There was a big pileup on one of the main highways, and he was stuck in traffic for much longer than what he would have typically been stuck in. How is it that your dad has transport stones from a witch, but the council doesn't?" Ben laughed. "Your dad asked the council member the same question. He said they only have so many in their possession, and the king only allows their use on specific types of missions." "Humph," I grunted, putting my hand on my hip. "So, what do we do now?" "Just wait and see what he tries, I guess," Ben replied. "He went to the pack first, then disappeared from there again. It was a little chaotic when I got there, but not as bad as it could have been. He took some warriors and his Beto with him, and we have some missing prisoners, but honestly, I think the pack members that are left are happy he is gone." "What does that mean for you?" "Well, based on our laws, he's abandoned his pack, which means the pack falls to his heir or to a council-appointed wolf if there is no heir. The council member officially passed the title to me about an hour ago, with your dad and my sister's mate as witnesses. We'll have my ceremony in a few weeks, once things have settled down a bit here." I smiled. At least something good had come from the disaster the day had turned into. We still had Timothy to worry about, but with Ben as the alpha of Amber Forest now, we had a solid ally to count on when he decided to show his face again. "Congratulations," I told him. "Congratulations to you as well," he said. "I heard you found your mate. Or, well, that your mate was the girl you were already in love with." "Yes," I replied, my smile getting broader. "She's mine. If she wants me still," I added. "I have faith in the bond," he said. "I'll let you go so you can get back to her. I hope she heals quickly." "Thanks," I said, then I hung up the phone. I set it on the windowsill, then leaned my palms against the cold glass, my forehand pressing into it as my eyes squeezed shut. 2 wolves. 2 lichens were out there, somewhere, both of them a threat to my mate and my pack. "Pierce?" Nolan asked me. "Gone," I replied. "Fuck." "Exactly." "Maybe he'll lie low?" Nolan suggested, but he didn't sound even the slightest bit convinced of that idea. "That's all we can hope for," I told him. A sudden wave of fear and panic washed over me, muted, but they're all the same. The slow, steady beep of the monitors began to pick up their pace until they filled the room with a cacophony of beeps and buzzes. I turned to find Haven sitting up in the bed, her eyes wide as she looked around the room and pulled at the wires and IVs attached to her body, trying to remove them. I stepped towards her, but the nurses rushed in at the same time, blocking her from me as they crowded around her, grabbing her hands to stop her from removing her fore. "No," she croaked, her feet kicking out at the nurses. Her chest rose and fell in quick shallow pants, her eyes darting around the room, flicking between all the machines. I realized then that the emotions I felt weren't mine, but hers. Nolan growled and snapped at one nurse, and I lunged forward, moving them out of the way. "Leave her alone," I commanded, my voice low but cold, and leaving no room for argument or disobedience. "Let her go and move away from the bed." They all stepped away as soon as the order fell from my lips. Haven's eyes moved to me, and a sliver of relief formed within her tangled mess of emotions. "Please, Wes," she whispered, her eyes looking around the room again, taking in the nurses and the monitors and the wires. "Please," she repeated, her arms wrapping around her knees as they curled into her body. Her breaths were still shallow, her body shaking as I walked to her slowly, taking her face in my hands and lifting her gaze to mine. My thumb stroked her cheekbones, and I held her stare. Her eyes were still wide and glassy, but her gaze didn't move from mine. "Get Dr. Russo," I told the nurses, my eyes still locked with Haven's. Her legs uncurled from her body, and she scooted towards me, her arms wrapping around my waist. I let go of her face so she could rest it against my chest, my hands moving to her back and rubbing up and down in long strokes. "Yes, Alpha?" Dr. Russo asked as he rushed into the room. "I'm taking Haven back to my house," I told him. "But her wound is healing faster than a human normally would," I said. "There is no blood on the bandage, and you haven't had to change it at all since they placed it on her neck. Whatever else you need to do to monitor her, you can do at my house." "Wesley, that isn't how. Can't you see she's terrified?" I growled, glaring at him. "She doesn't feel safe here." Her arms tightened around me, and I could feel her surprise at my understanding of the cause of her panic. "The hospital." Of course, the hospital gave her a panic attack. Before, when they'd been stitching her up, she wasn't completely lucid. She was in pain and shock and had adrenaline coursing through her. But after all of that wore off, and she realized where she actually was, well, she panicked. And it made sense. The hospital most likely brought back memories of the worst day of her life, the day social services took away her from Jack and Shirley. From her family. I'd heard all about that day, both from her and her parents, about how everything had happened, and how awful it had been for her. I wasn't about to force her to stay in a place that made her relive those moments. "Is she stable?" I asked him. "Yes," he sighed. "Her 4 antibiotic is done. I can do all her checkups from your house." I didn't say anything else. I just scooped Haven up into my arms and cradled her against my chest. The nurse removed her 4. Then Haven looped her arms around my neck, burrowing her face into my chest. I walked out of the clinic with her in my arms, Nolan trotting along behind us, still ready and in his wolf form. I carried her all the way to my house, holding her as close to my body as I could, using the mate bond to soothe her and settle her frayed nerves. When we reached the house, Nolan stayed on the porch as I took Haven into my room and settled her on the bed. I turned the lamp on, then looked her over, taking in the uncomfortable hospital gown she wore, then asked, "Do you want one of my shirts?" She nodded, and I kissed the top of her head, then went to my dresser to grab a shirt for her. Through the bond, I could feel her slowly calming down, and I could hear her breathing deeply through her nose. "Can you untie this?" she asked me as I handed her the t-shirt, her fingers pinching the fabric of the gown. "My shoulder is still sore," she added softly. Her voice was still raspy from the damage to her vocal cords, but the swelling and bruising on her neck was already diminishing. "Of course," I murmured, moving behind her to help. She pulled the loose gown off of her arms, and I stayed in my spot, putting the shirt over her head for her so she didn't have to lift her arms. I closed my eyes to give her privacy, even though I'd seen her naked before. But I didn't know where we stood anymore, and I wanted to be respectful. "Do you need any other clothes?" I asked her as she changed. "I'm sure Maddie has more in one of the guest rooms." "I'm fine for now," she said. "Okay," I replied, peeking through my shed lids to see if she'd finished. She gave me a weak smile. Her eyes were still puffy and watery, and even though she was calming down from her panic attack, there was still lingering anxiety under her brave face. My Leakin whimpered in my head, urging me to take her in my arms and hold her, but I held myself back, too nervous to hurt her or scare her. "I'll sleep on my couch," I muttered as I turned off the lamp, pointing at the white couch in the sitting area of the master's suite. I stepped away from the bed, but her hand grabbed mine with an iron grip, stopping me from going any further. I turned to her, and she shook her head, scooting over to make room for me on the bed. "Are you sure?" I asked, and she nodded, leaning back against the pillows and sliding under the white comforter. She rolled onto her right side and curled up into a ball as I crawled onto the bed with her. I lay down next to her on my back, an inch of space between us. I could feel my Leakin glaring at it in my mind, pushing at me to close the gap. I clenched my jaw, though, and held still. I didn't want to push her. She wanted me with her in the bed, but did she really want me? Would she spurn my affections, or would she return them? The answer to those questions came in the form of her small voice saying, "I need you to hold me, Wes." I wrapped my body around hers in less than half a second, pressing myself close to her. She didn't need to tell me twice. I would take whatever she let me have, because I knew the next day we would need to have a very long, important talk, and I didn't have even a tiny idea of how that conversation would go. I just prayed to Celine that Haven wouldn't give me too much hell come morning, and that the day would end with our bond still intact.
Haven's POV.
I awoke wrapped in a cocoon of soothing warmth, surrounded by the scent of Wesley's cologne, stronger and sweeter than I'd smelled it before. I nestled further into the warmth, pressing my back into Wesley's solid chest, pulling his arm tighter around my body. The safety and security I felt from being that close to him settled my heart indescribably. His skin against mine set little fireworks off everywhere we touched. Those tiny sparks spread pleasure and warmth throughout not just my body, but my entire being. My soul. It was strange. His touch had always felt different to me, but after the previous night, that sensation was even more pronounced. I tensed, and my eyes popped open as everything from the night before came crashing into me all at once. The club. Lennox attacking me. My panic attack when I woke up in an unfamiliar hospital. And Wesley. Wesley coming to my side when I was hurt, Wesley staying by my side and comforting me while the doctor and nurses stitched me up. And Wesley taking me in his arms and bringing me to his house so I didn't have to stay in a place that only reminded me of one of the worst days of my life. But he'd also ignored me for almost an entire week. He'd given me the space I'd asked for, yes, but then when I was ready to talk, he'd given me the cold shoulder. Ghosted me. For real. I swallowed against the tightness and burning in my throat, blinking back the wetness pooling in my eyes. I fought an internal war within my heart as I lay ensconced in Wesley's arms in his bed. I wanted to stay there, to sink further into Wesley's body, and take refuge in the safe harbor that was his presence. But his warmth and the tingles from his touch and the overpowering scent of his cologne muddled my thoughts and toyed with my resolve to yell at him. And I needed to speak my piece. To give him hell. With newfound determination, I lifted his arm off my body and sat up, scooting to the edge of the bed so I could use the restroom. Almost instantly, I felt empty and cold and alone, as if something connected his touch and presence to my moods. Which was preposterous. While in the bathroom, I avoided my reflection. I didn't need a mirror to tell me how awful I looked. I could feel it. Feel the dirt and dried blood on my body, and see the dried blood splattered on the ends of my hair that had been removed from its high ponytail at some point. It would need to be washed, but I knew the doctor probably needed to clear me for that first. Haven? Wesley called from his bedroom, and I felt a flutter of fear and confusion that wasn't my own, there and then gone again as quick as a wink. "I'm in the bathroom," I called back, shaking off the remnants of the weird emotions that weren't my own. "Are you all right?" I rolled my eyes, but bit back my sass. "I'm fine. I'll be out in a second." I stood in front of the door and shut my eyes as I readied myself. I needed to stand strong. Firm. I couldn't let his chocolate brown eyes or his handsome face sway me. I opened the door to find him pacing at the foot of the bed, his thumbnail between his teeth. His sweatpants were slung low across his hips, showing off all the lines and muscles of his abdomen. The muscles I had ran my hands over and had felt pressed against me as he made love to me over and over that night we had shared. I had to tear my eyes away because that was a trap I could fall into all too easily. His head swiveled to me, and I almost softened again at the dark circles under his eyes showing how much sleep he had lost because he was worried about me. His hair was messy from the bed and probably from his hands running through it. And he was still sexy as sin, even in his exhaustion. He froze in place, and I stared at him, stuck and unsure what to do or say next. Everything I had planned on telling him, every word I had rehearsed, felt inadequate. How could I ever make him understand what he had yet again done to me by ignoring me? "Could you get me some pants?" I asked, tugging at the hem of his t-shirt. I looked down at the floor as I cursed myself. "Could you get me some pants? Really?" That's what my mouth decided to say. "Yeah, I'll grab some of Maddie's," he muttered, blowing out a breath and rushing out of the room. I released my own sigh and rubbed at my forehead, walking back to the bed and climbing under the fluffy blankets. I'd still put the pants on, but the comfort and warmth of Wesley's bed was like a safety net for me. And I was still sore and tired and feeling weak. Wes came back with an armful of clothes, jeans, pajama pants, and leggings, and placed them on the bed near me. "I wasn't sure what kind of pants you wanted, so I brought all of them," he said, putting his hands on his hips. I gave him a half-hearted smile and grabbed the leggings, slipping them on while still keeping my body covered with his white comforter. He returned the smile, then moved the clothes to his dresser, stacking them on top of it before turning to look at me again. Our eyes locked together, and all the fight went out of me again. I was just empty. And tired. So tired. "I think I'm going to sleep some more," I whispered, my lip quivering without my permission. I leaned back against the pillows and pulled the comforter up. I tucked it under my chin and closed my eyes so I could just go back to sleep and not have to think about any of the events of the week. But Wesley had other plans. "Haven, I really think we should." Thankfully, the doorbell cut him off. I heard him growl and mutter something under his breath, and I bit back my laugh as he left the room. I was mad at him, sure, but it was hilarious that when he tried to insist on having a conversation I wasn't ready to have, something interrupted him. And now that I knew the truth about what he was, his growling just made me laugh. "Dr. Russo is here to check on you," he grumbled, and I turned to find him scowling in the doorway, clearly not pleased with the disruption. I sat up again as Dr. Russo entered, his smiling face very reminiscent of his daughter's. Or, I assumed, his daughter, since they shared a last name. "Nice to see you awake, Luna," he said, nodding his head at me. "Haven," I corrected, frowning in confusion. "My name is Haven." Dr. Russo glanced back at Wes, but Wes just kept glowering, with his arms crossed, still agitated by the intrusion. I couldn't help the little thrill that went through me at his annoyance. "Right, well, like I said, I'm happy to see you in better spirits than last night," he said. I gave him a tight smile. "Thank you. Would you like Wesley to stay or step out?" "He can stay," I muttered, and Wes relaxed a little, leaning against the wall by the door. I was still mad at him, but I didn't want to be alone with the doctor either. I didn't know him, and Wesley's presence was still calming me a little. Not as much as it did when he was next to me and touching or holding me, but just knowing he was there helped me feel safe. "I'm going to check your wound and see if we need to replace the bandage or anything. And I'm going to go over the results of your blood tests with you," Dr. Russo said as he sat on the bed with me. "What tests?" I asked. "We wanted to check for any infection. And we wanted to check if you were pregnant. It's a standard procedure for emergency situations." My eyes widened, and my heart skipped a beat. Wesley's face paled, and that sensation of emotions that didn't belong to me hit me again, stronger than before. I avoided Wesley's eyes, though. It embarrassed me that we didn't even talk about condoms or birth control or anything before we slept together. Not that it mattered, since I was protected, but still. It should have been a conversation we had. "It was negative," the doctor added. "I know. I'm on birth control," I muttered. "The implant," I clarified. Relief flashed in Wesley's eyes and he relaxed, leaning against the wall and closing his eyes. And even though I wasn't ready for kids, seeing his relief that I wasn't pregnant cut deep. Was the thought of being tied to me by sharing a kid really that awful? I glared at him, and his eyes widened and his face paled even more. No, I'm thinking about your career, about how you said your ex wanted to just turn you into a baby maker, and how you didn't want that. But I want to have kids with you at some point. I mean, if you want to have kids. If you don't want to have kids, that's fine too. I mean... Dr. Russo cleared his throat and raised a brow at Wesley, who blushed and looked down at his feet. I turned away from Wes and looked over towards the window of his sitting area, wishing the blinds were opened so I could see out to the lake and the forest and the mountains. I kept my gaze over on that side of the room as the doctor moved the neck of my shirt and carefully peeled the bandages off. My mouth twitched with the hint of laughter at Wesley's rambling, but I didn't want him to know he amused me. Interesting, Dr. Russo said as he examined the wound. What? Wes asked with a strained voice. The wound is healing faster than I expected, he replied. I knew your presence would speed up the process since she's your mate, but I wasn't expecting it to heal this quickly. I turned my head to look down at the wound as best I could. Sure enough, the stitches had already dissolved, and all that was left were raised pink lines across my left collarbone and chest. I lifted my right hand and grazed my fingertips over each line, feeling how they rose and fell as they passed over every spot where Lennox's lichen had bitten into me. The scars will stay, though? Wesley asked. I looked up at him, and his face was pained as he watched me examine my wounds. A tiny wave of guilt that wasn't mine flashed through me. His guilt, I realized. I was feeling his emotions. I lowered my eyes back to the scars, a bit smug that he felt guilty. He should feel guilty for ignoring me and for what happened to me because of that. The mate bond sped her healing, but it's not a magic eraser, Dr. Russo said. She still will heal like a human, not a shifter, he added. There was that word again. Mate. I remembered Wesley saying it the night before, when he came into the room and saw my wound. And the doctor had said it twice since he'd been in Wesley's room. And Nolan had mentioned mating that day when Wesley showed me his lichen. I pursed my lips a little and furrowed my brow, trying to make sense of it all, trying to figure out what it meant. I looked between Wesley and Dr. Russo, watching as Wes shuffled his feet and avoided my gaze. I narrowed my eyes at him and said, "What's a mate?" Wes winced and rubbed the back of his neck, still avoiding looking at me. I fixed my stare on him, boring it into the side of his face, daring him to look at me. The tension in the room ratcheted up at least 10 notches, and Dr. Russo swiveled his head between the two of us a few times before he stood to leave. Well, everything looks to be in good shape, Lou Haven, he said as he walked to the door. Your soreness should go away by the end of the day, and you should have a full range of motion in your shoulder by then. You can resume all of your normal activities. Just have Wesley contact me if you have any questions or concerns. He walked out of the bedroom, and a few seconds later, I heard the front door open and close behind him. Then silence as I continued to glare at Wesley. If he thought I would let him keep something else a secret, let him lie to me or ignore me, he was gravely mistaken. I would not fall into that trap of his again. I would not let his warm eyes and his devilish smirk and the heat from his touch lull me into a false sense of security. No. I wanted answers. I was tired and empty before, but embers of fury had filled that vacuum, and I knew I wouldn't be able to rest until I had what I wanted. The truth. All of it. And then I would give him hell. He finally moved his gaze to mine, his jaw set, and I said, "Start talking. Now."
Haven's POV.
I'll tell you whatever it is you want to know, Wesley said. I won't lie to you, Haven. I won't ever lie to you again. You better not, I muttered, leaning back against the pillows and crossing my arms. A flicker of amusement hit me, but his face stayed stoic and blank as he kept leaning against the wall, not showing his reaction on the outside. Probably because he didn't want to piss me off. A little late for that. I won't, he said again. Which is why, before we talk about anything else, I want to be upfront with you about something. And I want you to hear it from me and not from someone else. I swallowed, but nodded. I knew whatever he was about to say to me would probably just piss me off even more, based on how he looked and felt. This alpha from another pack, that's what we call ourselves, all of us werewolves who live together in one group. Well, my dad has been trying to get access to his business accounts because he felt that not everything was on the up and up with his funds. He's been making different offers to him over the last year or so to form an alliance so we'd have access as we merged some of our businesses. But Alpha Timothy turned him down every time. I frowned, but nodded. I didn't really understand his world, business, or werewolf, but I could make sense of most of what he said. What does that have to do with anything? With us? I asked. He grimaced and said, "A lot, actually." "How?" I replied. "After you left last week, I went to the pack house to talk to my dad, and when I got there, he was in a meeting with Timothy. Timothy had brought a new offer, a new proposal to my dad. And it involved me." He blew out a breath and ran his hand through his hair as he prepared himself to say whatever it was he was going to say next. "It involved me and his daughter." My eyebrows shot up into my hairline. That was not what I expected him to say. "What do you mean, it involved you and his daughter?" "He wanted us to form an alliance with our packs by having Nicole and I take each other as mates." "Mates?" I repeated. That word again. The one I kept hearing. "Basically, we'd unite the packs through marriage. Still separate packs, but tied together by the mating alliance. Like a contract marriage. Or a political marriage. Like what rich people or royal people or other cultures do." I asked, and he nodded. "So, what did you say after you heard this proposal?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest and my stomach boiling. I said yes. But I had no intention of actually going through with it. I only pretended to agree to it so we'd get what we needed and could finally take him down, then the contract would be void. "So you were pretending?" "Yes." "Did this other girl know you were pretending?" "Yes. She wanted to help us. Her and her brother wanted their father gone too." "Why?" "He cheated on their mom. A lot. It basically killed her," he hissed, his face a mixture of disgust, sorrow, and anger. "That's awful," I murmured, and he nodded his agreement. "So you were pretend engaged?" "Yeah." "And that's why you didn't call me back when I called you?" "Yeah," he repeated, quieter this time, glancing down at his feet. "I had to convince Timothy that I was serious about his daughter. He could smell you on me when I came to the meeting." I wrinkled my nose and furrowed my brow again. "Smell me? How?" "Werewolf. Remember," he said, tapping his nose. "We have enhanced senses such as sight and smell." Oh. He didn't want his daughter to be someone's side piece. Ironic, when you think about how he treated his own mate. "My dad said I should wait until all of it was done before contacting you. I thought it would all be done by the end of the weekend." "But it wasn't," I finished for him. "No. It wasn't," he admitted. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready yet for that. I still had questions, and I still needed answers about this whole fake engagement thing. I just stared at him, waiting for him to continue his story. He waited, but when he realized I would not respond to that, he pressed on. "Timothy wouldn't agree to give us what we needed until I agreed to actually schedule the mating ceremony with his daughter. So we scheduled it for Friday. Once we had what we needed, we sent it to the king so he could look over it and make his decision. We kept the ceremony set for Friday even when the king informed us he would be coming to arrest Timothy because we didn't want to make him suspicious by backing out." "So you're not married? Or mated or whatever?" I asked, looking down at my fingers. "No!" he exclaimed, standing up straighter. "No, of course not. I never intended to be. I only agreed so we could get the information that we needed. And Nicole found her real mate while she was pretending to be at her bachelorette party." "But what if the king hadn't convicted Timothy? Or what if he hadn't gotten back to you in time? And what if Nicole hadn't found her real mate? What would you have done?" I asked. His face went white and I could almost feel his heart skipping a beat and sticking in his throat. Of course, he hadn't thought about that when he made his plan. Neither of us wanted it, Haven, he breathed out. I guess we would have gone through with it, pretended to be mated, until everything was finished and we could annul the union. But I wouldn't have marked her. I would never have marked her as my mate. I didn't understand what he meant by that, but I just nodded, still staring at my fingers. I could add that to my list of questions. Okay, I muttered. I can kind of understand what you were trying to do. Trying to help your pack and your dad and your king. I mean, I don't really get it, but I get it. He sighed, and I felt a brief twinge of relief from him. I know it's a lot to take in and understand, and you've sort of just been thrown into it, and I'm sorry. He kept apologizing, which was good, because it was what I wanted, but I wasn't done. I wasn't ready to forgive him. I still had more questions, more things I needed to address. So, if a mating ceremony is like a wedding, then a mate is like a husband or a wife? I asked. Yes and no, he replied. There are different types of mates. Chosen mates and fated mates. A chosen mate means you pick each other and agree to be together, even though there isn't a mate bond. Nicole and I were pretending to be chosen mates. And a fated mate? A fated mate is a soulmate. Your other half. Your perfect match. There is no one more important to a werewolf than their fated mate. He stared at me with the same intensity he had the night before, the way he had when he first entered the hospital room and when he'd held me after my panic attack. The words he left unspoken hung between us, daring one of us to acknowledge them. To say them out loud. And I'm yours? I whispered. I was terrified to hear his answer. I wasn't sure if I wanted him to say yes or if I wanted him to say no. If he said yes, it would raise so many more questions and insecurities that I wasn't sure I wanted to deal with. But if he said no, I knew that would hurt more than I wanted to admit to myself. Yes, he replied. You're mine. Your soulmate, I added. He nodded. And there's some sort of a magical bond between us? Tying us together? The mate bond, Dr. Russo called it? That's what we call it, yeah. Is that why I can sense your emotions? I asked him, and he nodded again. Can you sense mine? I can. What am I feeling right now? Hurt and confused and overwhelmed. Hurt because I ignored you after you asked me for space. Confused because you understand why I did what I did, and you respect the choice I made to help my dad and our pack, but it resulted in you getting hurt. Both physically and emotionally. And overwhelmed because you don't know what to make of all of this and how you feel about it. I swallowed against the tightness in my throat and blinked against the wetness in my eyes, tilting my head to the ceiling to hide it from him. I had cried too much already. I hated that he not only could feel my emotions, but he even understood where each of them came from. I didn't know if that was from the bond or because he just knew me that well, understood me that well, but either way, I did not like it. But he was right. I was hurt and confused and overwhelmed. And I still had more questions. I just wanted to rest, both my body and my brain, but I needed to get everything out in the open between us first. I have 2 more questions, I told him, looking at him again. I'm listening. I thought for a moment, thought about which question to ask him first. Which answer I wanted to hear first. They were both significant questions, both questions that the answer could make or break me. How long have you known I'm your mate? I muttered, deciding that question was better to ask first. The answer he gave me would determine whether I asked him the other question I wanted to ask. Blossoming understanding hit me from his side of the bond, and I held my breath as I awaited his answer. I didn't know until I saw you last night in the hospital. I smelled you on Sebastian, and my Leakin recognized your scent as the scent of his mate. And once I saw you, the bond between us fell into place fully, he explained. My held breath came out on a shaky sob, heavy relief sinking into every fiber of my being. I didn't realize how much I needed that to be his answer until he said it. How scared I was of the other option. My trembling hands wiped the tears that fell from my eyes, and my hoarse voice said, "So you didn't just what, Haven?" Wesley asked, taking a step towards me, finally moving from his pose against the wall by the door. "I just wanted to know whether you wanted to be with me because you wanted me, or because there was some magical thing connecting me to you, saying you had to be with me," I choked out. He crossed the room in long, hurried strides and sat on the edge of the bed, his hands cupping my face. "No! Shit, no, that's not it at all, Haven. I wanted to date you because I wanted to. Everything I've done because I love you, Haven." I lifted my eyes to his, holding his stare, inhaling sharply. "You love me?" I whispered. He nodded, his thumbs swiping at the tears streaming down my cheeks, leaving little tingles in their wake. "I do," he said. "I love you so much, Haven." "Why?" I asked. "Because of some magical bond?" "No," he told me, shaking his head and moving closer to me. "I love you because you're you. I love you because you're my best friend. You are the only person who truly calls me out on my shit and doesn't sugarcoat it, and you've done that since day one. You're the first person I think of every day and the last person I think of at night. I can't imagine my life without you in it, because you are my life. I love everything about you, from your fiery red hair to your fiery attitude when you don't listen to me. I love you, and I think I always have. I was just too young to understand it, and then too stubborn to realize it." I could sense the honesty behind his words, sense his sincerity, his love for me. All of it was there, in the bond and in his confession, laid out for me to see and hear and understand. But it didn't change what he did. It didn't change how he'd ignored me. Lied to me. I didn't even care about the fake engagement thing. I could look past that and understand he was helping his people. But ignoring me. Not communicating with me. Especially when he knew my biggest fear, my biggest insecurity. It would have been so easy to fall into his arms and profess my love back to him. To let him hold me and love me and kiss away the pain of the previous days. But he needed to know how badly he'd hurt me. He needed to understand I wouldn't let that slide. I needed to know for certain he wouldn't do something like that again. "While that was a wonderful speech," I said slowly, bracing myself, steeling myself to do what I didn't really want but needed to. I wrapped my fingers around his wrists and pulled his hands from my face. "It doesn't change the fact that you ignored me." "I know," he replied. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You could have called me. Or found some way to contact me and explain," I told him. "I would have understood and stayed hidden and pretended with you. We could have been a team, but instead, you chose to just ignore me and make me feel like I didn't matter anymore. Like I was just a fling. Like you used me and tossed me aside." "I couldn't, Haven," he sighed. "Yes, you could have." "No, I couldn't. I literally couldn't. My dad ordered me not to." "Oh, and you just do whatever Daddy says still? Even at 24 years old?" "When it's an alpha command, yeah, I have to follow it." "What's that?" I asked. "It's an order that we have to follow. It's literally impossible to not follow an alpha order. The only person who isn't affected by one is an alpha's mate," he explained. "And, as I said before, Timothy smelled you on me. He asked me about you. He threatened you. Not outright, but the threat was there. I was protecting you. I couldn't let him know how much you meant to me, or you could have gotten hurt." A dark chuckle escaped my lips without warning. "And yet, by you protecting me, I got hurt anyway." I threw back at him. He flinched, and his chin dropped to his chest, his hands pulling away from mine. "And I'll never forgive myself for that," he muttered. "As soon as I heard you were hurt, I realized just how badly I'd fucked up. And I know there is nothing I can do to fix it or change it. I just hope that someday, you find you can forgive me." I felt guilty almost right away for throwing that in his face. I didn't really blame him for what Lennox did. It wasn't anyone's fault except for Lennox. But in my pettiness, I wanted him to hurt, too. even though he was already beating himself up for what happened to me. I stared at him for a long moment, thinking about what I wanted to do next. I would forgive him, of course. If I was honest with myself, I had already forgiven him. But I was still going to make him work for it. I narrowed my eyes at him, and then tossed the covers aside, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed and standing up. "What are you doing?" Wesley asked, standing up and following me to the door. "I'm going for a walk," I told him. "Why?" "To think," I answered, walking into the living room area. Nolan sat on the couch with a mug of coffee in his hands, finally out of his wolf form, staring straight ahead as he pretended as if he hadn't heard our entire argument. "Go on a walk with me?" I asked him, and he raised his brows, then set his mug down on the coffee table and stood up. "Sure," Nolan replied. "Are you going to reject me?" Wesley murmured as he followed the two of us to the door. "What?" I asked. "Are you going to reject me as your mate?" I turned and looked at him, my eyes scanning all of him, taking in the desperate and pained look on his face. I swallowed, guilt already eating my insides, before I even spoke the words. "I don't know," I told him. With that, I turned and walked out the front door, Nolan hot on my heels.